I've never told anyone this before. Not my wife, not my therapist, not even the man who spent 7 years in prison because of me. Every night at exactly 2:13 a.m., I wake up sweating, because that was the exact time the police knocked on my apartment door 13 years ago. And every single night, I wonder the same thing. Would my life have been better if I had confessed? Or would I still have destroyed everything anyway? My name is Daniel, I'm 36 years old, I own a successful construction company, I live in a beautiful house outside Chicago, I have a wife who trusts me, a daughter who thinks I'm her hero. But none of them know who I really am. Because when I was 23, I ruined someone's entire life. And I let him take the blame. This all started back in 2013. I was broke, not struggling artist broke, not living paycheck to paycheck broke. I mean the kind of broke where your electricity gets shut off and you pretend candles are romantic. I shared a tiny apartment with my best friend Marcus. We'd known each other since high school. He was the kind of guy everyone loved instantly, funny, loyal, fearless. Marcus had this annoying habit of believing people were good, especially me. At the time, I was working nights at a warehouse, minimum wage. No future, and buried under almost $40,000 of debt. Credit cards, student loans, gambling. Yeah, that part matters. Nobody knew how bad my gambling addiction had become. I hid it from everyone. Marcus thought I was just stressed. But the truth? I owed dangerous people money. One night, after losing nearly $6,000 in an underground poker game, I got cornered in a parking lot by two men. One of them grabbed my shirt and shoved me against my car. "You've got 1 week," he said. After that, we stop asking nicely. I laughed nervously like he was joking. He punched me so hard I tasted blood. That's when I realized I was trapped. For the next few days, I couldn't think straight. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating. I kept imagining those men showing up at my job, or worse, at the apartment. Marcus noticed immediately. "What's going on with you?" he asked one night. I lied. I said work was stressing me out. He stared at me for a long moment, then he reached into his wallet and handed me $400. "Pay me back whenever," he said. That's who Marcus was. And that's exactly why what happened next makes me sick. A week later, Marcus told me something that changed everything. His uncle owned a jewelry store downtown, and every Friday night, Marcus helped transport inventory from the shop to a secure storage facility. Normally, it was done with armored security, but sometimes his uncle cut corners. "There's probably over $500,000 in diamonds in those cases," Marcus joked. $500,000. The number echoed in my brain like a siren. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. One robbery, one bag, and all my problems disappear. At first, I hated myself for even considering it. But desperation changes people. It turns fear into logic. Within 3 days, I had convinced myself it wasn't really stealing, insurance would cover it, nobody would get hurt. I just needed enough money to survive. That Friday, Marcus invited me to ride along. "Come on," he laughed, "we'll grab burgers after." I almost said no. I should have said no. Instead, I climbed into the passenger seat. It was raining heavily that night. The streets were nearly empty. Marcus was singing terribly to some old rock song while driving. And all I could think about was the loaded cases sitting in the trunk. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I had already made arrangements. I'd texted the poker guys, told them where we'd be, told them when. I told myself they'd just scare Marcus, take the diamonds, leave. That was the plan. But plans are lies people tell themselves before everything falls apart. At exactly 11:42 p.m., headlights appeared behind us. Marcus looked in the mirror. "That car's been following us for a while," he said. Then suddenly, bam! The SUV slammed into the back of our vehicle. Marcus cursed and pulled over. Before I could even speak, 3 masked men jumped out. One smashed Marcus's window with a gun. Everything happened too fast. Marcus fought back immediately. That's the problem, he wasn't scared enough to cooperate. I remember shouting, "Marcus, stop." Then I heard the gunshot. To this day, that sound still lives inside my skull. Marcus collapsed onto the steering wheel, blood everywhere. The masked men grabbed the cases and ran. I froze, I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. Marcus looked at me, actually looked at me, and whispered, "Danny, help me." I called 911. But deep down, I already knew something worse than the shooting had happened. Because when the police arrived, I lied. I told them I didn't recognize the attackers. I told them it was random. I told them Marcus fought heroically. And for a while, it worked. Marcus survived the shooting, barely. But everything changed after the investigation. See, the police discovered something. One of the stolen diamond cases was found abandoned 3 blocks away, and Marcus's fingerprints were all over the inside compartments. His uncle immediately accused him. Said Marcus must have staged the robbery. Then things got even worse. The police discovered Marcus had recently borrowed money, a lot of money. What they didn't know was that he borrowed it to help pay for his mother's cancer treatment. But suddenly, Marcus looked guilty. And me? I stayed silent. Because if I admitted the truth, the poker guys would come after me. Or so I told myself. Marcus begged me to testify for him. "I know this looks bad," he said, "but you were there. You know I didn't do this." I looked him straight in the eyes, and I said, "I'm sorry. I don't remember much. I will hate myself forever for that sentence." The trial lasted 8 days. 8 days where I sat in court pretending to be confused, pretending to be traumatized, pretending to be innocent. Marcus kept staring at me during testimony, like he was waiting for me to finally tell the truth. But I never did. When the guilty verdict was read, Marcus didn't cry. He just looked at me. And nodded. Like he finally understood. 7 years. That's what they gave him. 7 years for armed robbery conspiracy. And me? I walked free. For a while, I thought I'd escaped. I used insurance fraud money from the robbery to pay my debts. I changed jobs, moved cities, started over. Eventually, I met my wife, built my business, had my daughter. And every year, I buried the guilt deeper. But guilt doesn't disappear. It waits. Like a patient animal. 3 years ago, I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a single sentence. "I know what you did." No signature. No explanation. I almost threw up. For weeks, I checked over my shoulder everywhere. At work, at home, at my daughter's school. Then another letter arrived. "This isn't over." I started drinking again, sleeping less, snapping at my wife. She thought I was having a nervous breakdown. Maybe I was. Then one night, I saw Marcus. It was outside a grocery store. At first, I didn't recognize him. He looked thinner, older, harder. But it was him. He stared at me across the parking lot. And smiled. Not an angry smile, not a revenge smile. A sad smile. Then he got into a truck and drove away. I sat in my car shaking for almost an hour. After that, the nightmares got worse. I'd dream about the gunshot, dream about Marcus bleeding, dream about my daughter finding out who her father really was. I started imagining police outside my office, imagining headlines, imagining prison. But nothing happened. Until last winter. That's when Marcus finally contacted me. He called at exactly 2:13 a.m. I answered immediately. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "You owe me a conversation." We met the next day at a diner outside the city. When I walked in, he was already there, coffee untouched, hands folded. I expected rage, screaming, threats. Instead, Marcus looked tired. "You know what prison teaches you?" he asked. I couldn't answer. "It teaches you that monsters aren't always violent people," he said. "Sometimes they're just cowards." That hit harder than any punch. I started apologizing immediately, crying, rambling, explaining. Marcus listened quietly. Then he said something I never expected. "I forgave you years ago." I stared at him. "What?" He nodded slowly. "I knew you were involved the moment those guys appeared," he said. "You were terrified before they even attacked us." I felt sick. "Then why didn't you tell the police?" I whispered. Marcus looked down at his coffee. "Because I knew those people would kill you." I couldn't breathe. Even after everything, he had protected me. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out the letters. "I didn't send these," he said. That's when real fear entered the room. Because if Marcus didn't send them, who did? Marcus explained that one of the men involved in the robbery had recently been released from prison. Apparently, he'd been arrested for another crime years later. And now he was talking. "He remembers you," Marcus said. I felt my entire body go cold. "Why are you warning me?" I asked. Marcus looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "Because despite everything, you were still my friend once." I broke down completely. Right there in the diner. I admitted everything, every lie, every selfish decision, every cowardly excuse. And Marcus just listened. Before leaving, he stood beside the table and said something I'll never forget. "You know what your punishment really is?" I looked up at him. "You got away with it." Then he walked out. I haven't seen him since. The FBI eventually contacted me 2 months later, not because of the robbery, not directly. The man who sent the letters had been trying to blackmail me. He wanted money in exchange for silence. I cooperated with investigators. Technically, there wasn't enough evidence left to reopen the case. Too many years had passed, too many dead ends. Legally, I survived. But morally, I died 13 years ago beside Marcus in that car. Sometimes my daughter asks me what bravery means. And every single time, I feel like a fraud. Because bravery isn't fighting, it isn't winning, it isn't pretending to be strong. Bravery is telling the truth when the truth destroys you. And I failed. If Marcus somehow hears this someday, I need him to know something. You deserved better. You deserved loyalty, you deserved honesty, you deserved a friend who would have burned his own life down before letting yours be destroyed. Instead, you got me. So that's my confession. I let my best friend go to prison for my crime. And the worst part? No judge ever sentenced me. Because some punishments follow you forever. After Marcus left the diner, I sat there alone for almost 2 hours. The waitress refilled my coffee 3 times, I never touched it. I just kept replaying everything in my head. The robbery, the gunshot, the courtroom, the look on Marcus's face when the verdict was announced. For 13 years, I had convinced myself that I was surviving, that I had no choice, that fear justified silence. But sitting there that night, I realized something horrifying. I hadn't been surviving. I had been hiding. There's a difference. Survival ends when the danger passes, but hiding becomes your entire identity. And suddenly every part of my life made sense. Why I hated mirrors, why I worked non-stop, why I panicked whenever someone mentioned police officers, why I couldn't sleep without noise in the background. Because silence gave my conscience room to speak. When I finally got home, my wife Emily was sitting at the kitchen table. The lights were off except for the one above the stove. She looked exhausted. "Where were you?" she asked quietly. I almost told her. For one terrifying second, I wanted to confess everything. I wanted to collapse into a chair and finally let someone see the truth. But fear won again. I told her I'd been meeting a client. She stared at me for a long moment, then she nodded. That hurt more than if she'd screamed. Because I realized she trusted me completely. And I didn't deserve it. That night I stood in my daughter Lily's bedroom doorway while she slept. She was 8 years old then, curled beneath a blanket with cartoon stars on it. Completely innocent. I remember thinking, if she ever found out who I really was, would she still love me? That question destroyed me. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. The blackmail letters stopped, But the paranoia didn't. Every unknown number felt dangerous, every car parked outside my office looked suspicious. One afternoon, I snapped at an employee so badly he quit on the spot. Another time, Emily caught me checking the locks on our doors 3 different times before bed. "You're scaring me," she whispered. I wanted to tell her she should be scared. Not of strangers, not of me. Then came the panic attack. I was driving home from work during a snowstorm when I suddenly couldn't breathe. My vision blurred. My hands went numb. I had to pull over because I genuinely thought I was dying. But the worst part? As I sat there gasping for air, the only thought running through my head was, maybe I deserve this. Eventually I started seeing a therapist. Not because I wanted help, because Emily begged me. The therapist's name was Dr. Reynolds. A calm older man with gray hair and the kind of voice that made silence uncomfortable. During our 3rd session, he asked me something strange. "If you could erase one moment from your life," he said, "which moment would it be?" I answered immediately. "The gunshot." But he shook his head. "No," he said softly, "that's not your real answer." I remember feeling angry, defensive. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked. He leaned back in his chair. "The gunshot was the consequence," he said. "The real moment happened before that." And suddenly, I understood. The real moment wasn't the robbery, it wasn't the trial, it wasn't even the lie. The real moment happened the instant I sent that text message. Because that was the moment I chose who I wanted to become. And I chose wrong. After that session, I sat in my car crying harder than I ever had in my entire life. Not because I felt sorry for myself. Because for the first time, I stopped pretending I was a victim. I wasn't trapped, I wasn't manipulated, I wasn't unlucky. I was selfish. And selfish people destroy lives. A month later, I tried calling Marcus. No answer. I tried again the next day, still nothing. Eventually, I drove to the address he'd mentioned during our diner conversation, a small rental house near the edge of town. But when I arrived, the place was empty. A neighbor told me Marcus had moved away 2 weeks earlier. No idea where, the man said, he kept to himself. And just like that, he disappeared again. Part of me thinks he did it intentionally, maybe he knew I'd come looking. Maybe he didn't want closure. Honestly, I don't blame him. Some wounds aren't supposed to heal cleanly. Months passed, then one day, something happened that changed me forever. Lily came home from school crying. Apparently another student had been blamed for cheating during an exam. The teacher believed the accusations immediately. But Lily knew the girl was innocent. "She didn't do it, Dad," Lily kept saying, "she was just scared." Then my daughter looked me directly in the eyes and asked, "What happens when innocent people get punished?" I swear to God, I almost collapsed. Because children ask questions adults spend their entire lives avoiding. I told her the truth. "Sometimes," I said carefully, "people stay silent because they're afraid." Lily frowned. "But that's still wrong, isn't it?" I couldn't answer. Because coming from her, it sounded so simple. So obvious. And that's when I realized something terrifying. Evil rarely feels evil while you're doing it. Most terrible decisions happen quietly, reasonably. One small excuse at a time. You tell yourself, just this once, just until things calm down, just until the danger passes. And then one day you wake up and realize your entire life was built on a lie. A year ago, I finally did something I should have done 13 years earlier. I wrote a full confession. Everything, the gambling, the setup, the lies, the courtroom testimony. Every disgusting detail. I printed 2 copies. One went into a safety deposit box. The other, I mailed it to Marcus. I don't know if he ever read it. He never responded. But writing it changed something inside me. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. Not peacefully, not happily. But honestly. There's a strange thing nobody tells you about guilt. Eventually, you stop fearing punishment. What you really fear is becoming the kind of person capable of what you did. That's the true horror. Knowing you crossed a line once means you could have crossed others too. Sometimes I look at old photographs of Marcus and me from high school. Two idiots smiling with cheap sneakers and terrible haircuts. Back then, we thought life was simple: good people, bad people, heroes, villains. But adulthood teaches you something darker. Most people exist somewhere in between. And under enough pressure, almost anyone can become dangerous. That thought keeps me awake more than prison ever could. Emily still doesn't know the full truth. Neither does Lily. Maybe one day I'll tell them, maybe I owe them that. But right now, I'm still trying to understand how to live with myself first. Do you know the strangest part of this entire story? The money never even made me happy. Not once. I paid my debts, I escaped the threats, I built a career. But every achievement afterward felt stolen. Every success carried Marcus's shadow. The house, the business, the vacations, the family photos. All of it felt contaminated. Because deep down, I knew part of my life had been purchased using someone else's suffering. That's the thing about dirty money. It spends normally, but it never feels clean. A few months ago, I visited the old street where the robbery happened. The city had changed, new buildings, different traffic lights, fresh pavement. But I still recognized the exact spot. I parked the car and stood there in silence. And for the first time in 13 years, I said Marcus's name out loud. Not in guilt, not in fear. In grief. Because I finally accepted something. I didn't just betray my best friend that night. I betrayed the version of myself that could have been decent. And once you lose that version of yourself, getting it back becomes the hardest thing in the world. Sometimes people online ask why channels like this exist, why strangers confess dark secrets anonymously. Maybe it's because humans aren't designed to carry this much truth alone. Secrets rot inside people. They poison marriages, friendships, sleep, memory. You can bury guilt beneath money, success, alcohol, religion, relationships, whatever you want. But eventually it finds cracks. And when it does, it spreads. So if someone listening to this right now is standing at their own crossroads, if you're one decision away from betraying someone who trusts you, please listen carefully. Fear passes, consequences fade, even scandals disappear eventually. But becoming someone you can no longer respect? That stays. Forever. And if Marcus is somehow hearing this now, there's one final thing I need to say. You were the best friend I ever had. Even after everything, even after prison, even after betrayal. You still tried to save me. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to understand how someone I destroyed could still show me mercy. Maybe that's what real goodness looks like. Not perfection, not innocence. Compassion. The kind I never deserved. Some secrets don't stay buried. Subscribe to Midnight Confessions for more true-style dark stories, secrets, betrayals, and late-night confessions.